The imperial nest of Dravis Prime had never witnessed such an anomaly. Empress Valoria, supreme matriarch of the draconian sovereignty, stood motionless in the center of her crystalline hatching chamber. Her scales, iridescent purple and gold, reflected the bioluminescent fungi that lined the walls. She was a creature of absolute power, 3 meters tall, with wings that could blot out suns and claws that had torn through warships. For 2,000 cycles, she had ruled with calculated precision, her intelligence unmatched across 17 star systems. Yet today, she felt something she had not experienced in centuries. Confusion. Before her, nested in the soft thermal moss of the hatching pit, were her 3 albino hatchlings. Born just 10 solar rotations ago, they were genetic rarities, their scales pure white, their eyes crystalline blue, rather than the traditional amber. Such offspring appeared once in a millennium, considered blessed by the ancient draconian prophets. They were destined for greatness, for leadership, for continuing her bloodline's domination, but they were not looking at her. They were looking at the human child. Leon sat cross-legged at the edge of the pit, his small frame barely reaching Valoria's knee joint. He was 8 standard years old, with dark hair that fell into his eyes and skin the color of terraformed soil. His clothing was simple, a gray jumpsuit issued by the Imperial Research Division, marked with identification codes that declared him property of the sovereignty. He was one of 700 humans kept on Dravis Prime for study, part of the spoils from the Terran outer colonies that had fallen during the Third Expansion War. Leon extended his hand, palm open, fingers splayed. The largest hatchling, already the size of a Terran wolf despite being barely 2 weeks old, chirped excitedly and scrambled over its siblings. It pressed its snout against Leon's palm, scales clicking softly. The other 2 followed immediately, tumbling over each other in their eagerness to reach the boy. Valoria's tail twitched. "Move aside, human." Her voice resonated through the chamber like rolling thunder. Every species in the known galaxy recognized that tone. It was the sound of absolute authority, of a predator that had never known fear. Leon glanced up at her briefly, then returned his attention to the hatchlings. "They're playing," he said simply. "They should be imprinting on their matriarch." Valoria stepped forward, her massive form casting a shadow over the pit. "I am their mother, their Empress. Their genetic template demands they bond with me first and foremost." The hatchlings ignored her completely. The smallest one had climbed into Leon's lap, curling against his chest and emitting soft, purring sounds. The other 2 pressed against his sides, competing for position. Valoria felt something crack in her carefully maintained composure. "Hatchlings, come." She sent out a pheromone pulse, the biological command that had never failed her. Every draconian offspring in history responded to their mother's call within seconds. The albino hatchlings burrowed deeper against Leon. "I don't think they want to," Leon said quietly. He was gently stroking the scales along the smallest one's spine, and the creature was melting under his touch. Eyes half closed, in contentment. "This is impossible." Valoria's wings flared involuntarily. "I have birthed 73 clutches. I have raised warriors, scholars, and fleet commanders. My genetic code is perfection itself. They must bond with me. Maybe they just like me better." There was no malice in Leon's voice, no triumph. He stated it as simple fact, the way a child might observe that water was wet. Valoria's mind, trained in strategic analysis and political maneuvering, raced through possibilities. Pheromone interference? No, the chamber was sterilized. Genetic defect? Impossible, the embryos had been sequenced perfectly. Human manipulation? Absurd, the boy had been brought here only this morning as part of a routine inspection of research subjects. She had ordered his presence specifically because hatchlings needed exposure to various species for threat assessment training. Humans were supposed to register as prey weak, slow, and tactically irrelevant, despite their recent irritating resilience during the war. Yet her offspring, her precious albino miracles, were treating this human child as though he were their mother. "What did you do?" Valoria demanded. Leon looked up at her with those strange, soft eyes that humans possessed. Eyes that held no protective, nictitating membrane, no predatory focus. I just sat with them. They were scared when they first saw me. So I sang, a lullaby. My mom used to sing it before. He trailed off, and Valoria's enhanced hearing detected the slight catch in his breath. Before the invasion, she realized. Before his colony fell, humans do not have bonding pheromones, Valoria said, more to herself than to Liane. Your body temperature is inadequate for egg incubation. Your vocalizations fall outside our primary frequency range. By every measurable parameter, you should be irrelevant to hatchling development. The largest hatchling chirped and nuzzled against Liane's neck. The boy giggled, actually giggled, and scratched under its chin. Valoria sat down heavily, her tail curling around her haunches. For the first time in a millennium, she felt the weight of something she couldn't control. Perhaps, Liane said softly, still focused on the hatchlings. It's not about pheromones or genetics. Maybe they just know. I won't hurt them. The words struck Valoria like a plasma bolt. She thought of her own upbringing, the trials, the combat training that began before her scales had hardened, the constant reinforcement that strength was everything. She had raised her own offspring the same way. It was the draconian method, refined over millennia. But these three, these genetic anomalies with their pale scales and crystalline eyes, had chosen differently. They had chosen warmth over strength, gentleness over dominance. They had chosen the human child. Valoria stood slowly, her massive form moving with predatory grace. She approached the pit and lowered herself to Liane's level. Something no Empress had done in recorded history. Teach me, she said quietly. Liane blinked in surprise. Whatever it is that makes them trust you more than they trust me. The boy considered this, then smiled, a small, genuine expression that transformed his face. Okay, but you have to sit down properly. And maybe don't look so scary. The supreme matriarch of the draconian sovereignty, conqueror of systems and destroyer of fleets, awkwardly lowered herself fully to the ground beside a human child. And slowly, cautiously, one of her albino hatchlings turned its head toward her. It was a beginning.